Welcome everyone, Christine here on Serious Gaming with a final update on the issue of the European Union Copyright Directive with the infamous Article 11 and Article 13 that are going to be voted up or down in the European Parliament. Well, the vote is going to be whether or not the European Parliament will accept the bill as has been proposed or the directive as has been proposed, or whether or not they want to enter into negotiations. Hopefully the vote will go down the path of negotiations, then we'll see what happens. But suffice to say, things aren't looking too good right now. I want to read an article from Torrent Freak. This has nothing to do about their stance on torrents or anything like that, but I'm reading this because I feel it illustrates what's really going on here and what kind of forces are at work. From Torrent Freak, Article 13, lobbying efforts clash before crucial copyright filters vote. In 2 days' time, a pivotal vote will take place in the European Parliament, one that could change the direction of copyright enforcement in the European Union. Framed around the so-called value gap, Article 13 aims to force internet platforms to play fair on licensing rates for record labels. Ahead of the vote, hundreds of groups and organizations are facing off in a final clash of the causes. Due to unlicensed copyright content being made available on YouTube and similar platforms, millions of citizens around the world are able to consume the same at rates close to free. This, of course, is a situation that's completely unacceptable to the content industries, the record labels in particular. While sites like YouTube compensate them for views on authorized content, the existence of unlicensed content uploaded by users means that the Google-owned giant gains an unfair negotiating position, or so the claims go. Soon, however, the labels hope that the free content ride will be over. In an attempt to plug the so-called value gap, they have lobbied strongly for new legislation, Article 14, that would see user-uploaded content platforms compelled to install filters to detect infringing content before it's even made available to the public. 2 weeks ago, the Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament jury voted on Article 13. With a 15-10 majority, the proposal of Rapporteur Voss was adopted. This means that the plans move ahead in their current form, despite massive and persistent public outcry. This Thursday, a plenary vote on the jury mandate will take place, so it's no surprise that both sides of the debate are rallying to ensure their voices are heard. In recent days, more than 80 creative sector groups and companies called on MEPs to support their position. That playing fair is the only way forward, billions at stake. We represent 4.5% of the European Union GDP and 12 million European jobs. We're the heart and soul of Europe's plurality and rich identities. On July 5th, we ask for you to back the mandate adopted by jury on the 20th of June, which is the result of long and intense negotiations, I wrote. There is a cynical campaign from tech companies flooding the inboxes of MEPs with scaremongering that the copyright directive would be the end of the internet. Please note that this is the 20th anniversary of the first claim that copyright provisions would break the internet. This has never happened. We need an internet that is fair and sustainable for all. The signatories to the appeal represent countless multi-billion-dollar companies whose interests will no doubt cause MEPs to sit up and listen. However, opponents of Article 13 are not sitting idly by and hoping for the best. In an open letter published this week by Copy Buzz, more than 145 organizations hit back, warning MEPs that Article 13 represents a serious threat to online freedom. Supported by groups including the EFF, Creative Commons, Communia Association, Public Knowledge, and Wikimedia, the letter highlights objections that the proposed legislation threatens innovation by making it more difficult for startups to go about their business without fear of litigation. We represent startups who generate 9.5% of the total European GDP and 2.5% of the labor market. We are the innovators that have chosen to embrace the future digital enables rather than grasp at the past. We are the believers of healthy competition, where barriers to entry should not be raised by poorly thought through regulation, to the detriment of millions of European innovators, they write. We represent human rights and digital rights who defend the core values of what has made the European Union's democratic model thrive. We believe that our fundamental rights are priceless, and we advocate for strong safeguards when fundamental rights are at risk, as in this case. By defending a democratic and open internet, we defend the same internet that allows human rights defenders to expose actions from oppressive governments and monopolies, while allowing a wide range of business models to enjoy their fundamental freedom to conduct a business. The group warns that Article 13 poses a threat to education and access to information and will seriously damage the impact to improve software via hubs that develop connected products. Because of all of the above, we urge you to vote for a public debate on the directive and therefore against the negotiating mandate. So this is a vote on negotiating. This would not stop Article 13 or 11 from being adopted. This would just open a negotiation on the issue between the European Parliament, European Commission, and other parties. Here's what I have to say. This fight, as noted by Torrent Freak, what it really boils down to, what's really started this fight, but is far above it, is the fight between the music industry and YouTube and other such platforms. The music industry, the record labels, certainly want to strangle YouTube. They've wanted so from the very beginning. They've sued it. They pushed legislation. In some cases in Europe, they have succeeded. Not anywhere else in the world, not really, not in the United States, safe harbor provision and all that. But in the European Union, they've had some success. This battle over Article 13, at the very core of it, is about the battle between YouTube and the music industry. That's the main issue. Then there's, of course, the movie industry and all that. But here's the problem. It's one thing to have legislation or a European Union directive that would deal with that. It's completely different what they're trying to do. Because they want to adopt a content filter, and not just for music or video. We already deal with that on YouTube. Fair enough, content ID on internet-wide level. Okay. Notwithstanding the issues that would arise out of this, wherein many websites would block access to Europe and Europe would become more and more isolated on the internet, but this goes far above that. It's far beyond this issue. It's more important than this issue. If this was purely about the spat between YouTube and the music industry, I would not give a single fuck about it. Because honestly, both are horrendous and both deserve to burn for all the things that they've gotten away with throughout the years. But here's the problem. Photos. It's one thing to talk about music on the internet. It's another thing to talk about video. But this encompasses copyright in general. Photography is a big deal on the internet. On many websites, many photos. And we don't really have the software to begin with that would deal with that, with filtering content on the internet. That would break not just YouTube, but many other websites on the internet. And I'll tell you what the outcome would be. An isolated European internet. Because you can be damn sure that many websites outside of Europe would not want to deal with this at all. And they would just block access or flagrantly violate European law by doing so. We've already seen with the GDR what happens when Europe adopts unilateral rules on the internet, that certain websites are not interested in dealing with our shenanigans. And they won't. And they simply will not in this case. You can talk about things like thumbnails or photos in this video, for instance, that could be a problem. And that just breaks the internet as we know it. And it's not just photography, it's copyright in general. How do you control that? How do you filter that? I mean, in the best case scenario, in the very best case scenario, this would ultimately be about music and movies, right? That could potentially end up working to an extent. It would create a lot of chaos. It would create a lot of problems if it even was just about that. But this goes way, way beyond that. And here's the issue. The second and most important issue, censorship. The European Union, for years now, has pushed for social media censorship because the political powers that be do not want to have people talking or having ideas that go against the norm. Politicians across the world don't know how to control the discourse on social media. They can't get away with things that they have been able to do in the past. They can't control the narrative as they have been able to do in the past. And as a result of that, what they've done is Europe is moving down the path of the China model, which is to control speech on the internet, and this would allow them to do it. If Article 13 passes as is, then in the name of copyright and content filters, they would be effectively able to censor the net as they wanted to. They already have a lot of power to do so as is. This would just give them a lot more power. It would break the internet as we know it. That's the fundamental issue. It's one thing to talk about the music industry, the movie industry, and the spat that exists between them and YouTube. That's fine. That's an issue. But that's an irrelevancy compared to the far bigger and far greater issue that exists here today. And ultimately, I think our Sargon of Akkad actually put it in a very good way. This spat boils down to the European politicians versus Silicon Valley, in a sense. Who do you trust to control content on the internet? Well, I have to agree with Sargon in saying that as much as I despise Silicon Valley and their narrative, I trust them more, and I think they've proven better capable at handling this than the European politicians when it comes down to it. And that's where I stand. Obviously, some people can disagree. Other people can think it's not as relevant of an issue. It is very important as an issue. This cannot be allowed to stand. It would be devastating, would be brutal. And I'm not talking here about myself on YouTube. If I'm being quite honest, looking at this, looking at what this fight is all about, looking at the music labels, would it hurt me all that much personally? To an extent, certainly, obviously. But this would hurt other people as well. And it would hurt civil rights activists, people that are against the establishment politically, activists of all kinds, NGOs, human rights organizations, all that. This is far bigger than a dispute about copyright on YouTube versus the music industry. But this is where it started. And this is what it's ultimately going to be about. We don't know how the vote is going to go. I do feel disappointed that this whole issue has gotten far less attention than what I feel it deserves, because it is a fairly significant affair. As we speak, the Italian Wikipedia has been shut down, but I don't think that's quite enough given the gravity of the situation. Christine here on Serious Gaming signing out. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And if you do like my content, please do consider supporting me via PayPal or Patreon. Well, I can still do these videos. I mean, who knows? Best case scenario doesn't really affect me all that much. Worst case scenario, well, this whole thing goes down in flames.